Hello, this is my week 6 help video for you, and this is the one where I posted some questions for you, or I posted a document for you to ask questions in Blackboard, and thank you for those of you who posted questions. Hopefully this recording will be helpful for you. So first there was one quick question about Sherbet, and I know that sometimes that website can be a little funky and a little hard to tell what exactly it's doing. If you have any questions about that and you're not sure if it recorded correctly and you want to just have it double checked before you submit it to your family presentation, you are welcome to email me that link and I will check and make sure that I can open it and then insert it into your family presentation. Another option, if you're afraid it might mess up your presentation in any way, instead of posting the link into the wiki, instead save your wiki, make a note of what you're doing, and then either email me the recording, or my preference would be post a comment to your wiki and include the recording in a comment. But again, make a note in your presentation that that's what you're doing, so I know to look in the comments for your link to your recording. So give that a try, and hopefully that's helpful. The other questions were all about input and how to comprehend what you read and write, or I'm sorry, what you read and hear in Spanish. And there's not an easy answer to those questions, but my first recommendation for both of them is make sure that you're working on the vocabulary. Make sure that you're practicing the vocabulary for each new chapter. And I'm going to be rude and look at my phone while I'm recording because I want to pull up the Quizlet app real quick. The Quizlet is a website, and it's also an app that is used for practicing vocabulary. And the links for the vocabulary for each of our chapters is in course documents in Blackboard. So I have right here, I have Quizlet on my phone, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it. But it's an app on the phone. So there's the Arriba Capítulo 1 vocabulary, and you can practice the vocabulary on your phone or on your computer. But it has all of the vocabulary, and it also has, one thing that's nice that it has is for each word, it has the recording that you can listen to, and it has that star, so you can mark the things that you are particularly struggling with for each chapter's vocabulary, and then just practice those. So here, I'll press the recording button so you can hear it. Oh, hang on just a minute. Take it off Bluetooth. Make sure my volume is turned up and try that again.
Anaranjado, orange color.
So you can practice them that way. There are also games that you can do. They're nothing fancy. It's not, if you're used to World of Warcraft or something like that. It's definitely not that, but it's a nice break from staring at a textbook. So I would recommend, if you don't already have it, download Quizlet if you have a tablet or a phone, a smartphone, use that, because the more you practice the vocabulary, the better you'll understand things that you hear and read in Spanish. So that's my first recommendation, is work on vocabulary memorization. And of course, there's lots of vocabulary that's not part of our 5 chapters that we're going to cover this semester, but this is a good start and it gives you a good foundation. So that's my first recommendation. The second one is particularly in regard to the listening. And people always complain specifically about the Pearson listening activities, those assignments where you have to listen and then answer or select the correct answer based on what you hear. And they are challenging. I do acknowledge that. They are difficult assignments, more so than the things that you have to read and respond to, because it's harder to understand spoken Spanish than written Spanish. And that's the same of any foreign language, any language that you learn. It's very difficult to pick up the sounds of the language and to be able to identify where does one word end and the next one begin. How many words am I even hearing in this sentence? So a couple of quick recommendations that I have for you. One is, be careful about getting stressed out by those assignments, because what happens is when we hear a string of words and we don't recognize them, our anxiety level goes up to here, and all of a sudden we can't understand anything. So if you are able to reduce that anxiety level and tell yourself, okay, I'm not limited on how many times I can listen to this. I can listen to it over and over again if I need to, and kind of try to get that stress level down, you will actually be able to comprehend what you hear better. So give that a try. Try working on some breathing techniques, or take a step away and then come back if you're getting frustrated. But another thing is listen for just one word at a time. Say, okay, this time I'm going to listen for the question word if it's a question that you're being asked. Or this time I'm going to listen for the verb, or for the subject, or for the first word, or for the last word. And just listen for one word at a time every time that you listen to it. And see if that helps. Because then, instead of getting frustrated and overwhelmed by the entire chunk of language, you can break it down a little bit. So give that a try. And then my final recommendation is just listen to Spanish as much as possible. And I know it's challenging. I know you're busy. Life is busy. It's crazy. But if you have any kind of downtime in your life, and I know that it's frustrating to fill up your downtime, but these are things that are low stress and easy to do. So try to find opportunities to listen to Spanish more. So of course there's local Spanish radio stations, but that's a very particular style of music. And if that doesn't suit your style of music, find something that you like to listen to. I have Spotify stations and Pandora stations that I've created for myself for Spanish, to listen to more Spanish. And then also I'm learning French, so I've created French stations for myself. And that's been really helpful because it provides me with more opportunity to hear the language and to get used to the sounds of the language. If you've had any training in music, you're familiar with the idea of having to train your ear to hear things. And that's what you're doing with a language too, is you're training your ear to recognize the sounds of that language, the rhythms and the patterns of that language. So the more you listen to Spanish, the better you'll be able to do even those unrelated MySpanishLab activities. You know, the Pandora songs you listen to aren't going to have the same vocabulary necessarily, but they are training your ear to recognize the sounds and the patterns of the language, so they will be helpful. You can listen to audiobooks in Spanish. That would be another option. You can download the MP3 files for our current vocabulary that I always link at the beginning of the weekly folders. And, the last one was movies. Most DVDs that you have, especially if it's like a children's animated movie, will have a Spanish language track. So take a movie that you know forward and backward, that you're really familiar with, that you can kind of, the kind of movie that you would play in the background while you're studying if you're not one of the people that needs absolute silence, because you know the storyline, and switch the language track to Spanish. And you already know how the story goes, and you know what the lines are. So this time you'll be hearing them in Spanish instead. And it's just more exposure to the sounds, the rhythms, the patterns of the language in a low stress setting where you don't have to understand it all. Same thing with the music. You don't have to understand every word. You don't expect to understand every word. The goal is not to understand every word. The goal is just to have exposure to the sounds. So hopefully that's helpful to you. Those are my biggest recommendations. Those are the things that I do when I'm learning a language. Those are the things that I have my kids do when they're learning a language, just because I really do think that in the long run, they are helpful with training your ear to recognize the sounds and with learning to reduce your anxiety level and say, okay, I don't need to understand absolutely everything, and this is still useful to me. That's a really important skill to develop. So hopefully that's helpful. Sorry, I went longer than I expected to. And I hope that addressed your concerns. Of course, it's not a magic bullet, but keep working on it. If you do, my one last note, if there's an assignment that you're really struggling with that has a listening section, and you know that the goal of the assignment is to demonstrate that you understand a particular grammatical concept, or the goal is not just listening, but the goal is to work with grammar, and you feel like not understanding the recording is keeping you from achieving the goal of demonstrating grammar proficiency, shoot me an email and ask for the text of that, the script for that assignment. And I will send you the script for the questions, and that way you can double check and make sure that you understand the grammar and that that's not what your hang up is with it. So, sorry, that's my last tip, and don't ever feel bad for emailing me. That's what I'm here for. If you want to have the script for one of the recordings, always feel free to email me and ask me for it. So I hope that's helpful, and I will see you all next week on my recording.